Right, just a couple minutes past the top of the hour. My goal today will be to have us start all our sessions on the hour, every hour. Thank you so much for being here. Here we are, it's the autumn equinox. Almost equal days, equal nights. We can all feel it. We're back into routine. We're back into our, fall season. The cool nights. So
hot days,
love to host these sessions that you can stay for one or all the sessions. We have a fantastic lineup of a great number of folks from the community showing up and sharing their wisdom with you on a wide variety of topics. So I'm grateful for you guys for being here. I'm grateful for those of us that are online, and it's also being recorded. It's all posted afterwards as well. So yeah, we'll have some samples for you along with some good fun education. It's super informal. So I think we'll leave that door open unless it gets too noisy. We can close it, but it'll just allow you to kind of come and go. There's bathrooms that way. Our first session, we're going to learn how to be your own herbalist, the path to becoming your own herbalist. My name is Saunders, and I don't necessarily call myself a herbalist. This is Angela Bewick.
I would say you are, there's so many different herbalists.
Yeah.
And I had my herbalist teacher, Colleen, had said, if you use herbs and you use them and you have a relationship with them, you can call yourself a herbalist.
So there we go. I'm a herbalist.
So you're all herbalists.
Yeah.
I'm assuming if you're here.
Absolutely.
You're going to be.
Yeah. And you know, I started my journey primarily focused on food, nutrition. That was really where I was focusing to try and shift my health in my early journey. And one of my best friends, he's a second generation herbalist. That's Yarrow Willard. His father is Dr. Terry Willard. And we kind of took paths where he went down his path of studying herbs. I went down my path of studying nutrition. And to be honest, I was very intimidated by the world of herbs. I wonder if you've ever felt that. It's like, oh my gosh, like there are so many herbs. There's so much to learn about it. And I was just like, okay, I'll just stick over here. I'll keep to my lane. I'll just do nutrition. And it wasn't until a number of years later, one of my friends and mentors says, you know, Malcolm, you can be your own herbalist, right? He's like, think about the word herbal practitioner. It's a practice. You just got to practice herbal medicine. He says, well, if you want to practice on others or with others, then yeah, go to school, get the degrees, like train, you know, become accomplished. But for yourself, he's like, just start practicing. And as you mentioned, you know, Colleen Emery, again, another one of our friends and mentors, like if you use herbs, you're a herbalist, right? In that regard. So we want to really kind of bring that back down, kind of highlight that path forward for you. To reclaim what I think is the most foundational form of healthcare, self-care, that every single human around the world throughout time, every single culture has utilized. It's the people's medicine. It's the folk medicine. Every traditional culture has some form of herbalism. And there's so many different paths to take. There's so many different herbs to take. And so we want to kind of simplify that, break that down, and share some tea with you and some ideas and some strategies of how you can bring what is simple, easy, effective, and very accessible form of self-care, you know, to add in to whatever you are doing. This is not to replace modern healthcare, right, or modern medicine. It's to add it in. And I say, like, if somebody now, you know, 10 times out of 10 will reach for a Tylenol, or they'll reach for a digestive thing or something for their sinuses, like, even if once we can inspire someone to just go 9 times out of 10, you know, like just that one time and slowly bring that down, there's so many reasons, so many benefits. It's more cost effective. Arguably, it's actually more effective than something that's over the counter. It's less risk, less side effects, on and on and on. And it's just so empowering, right? To be your own herbalist, to be on this path. So if you're coming today with the idea of like, actually, I really want to be a herbalist. I want to help the community and I want to be that herbalist practitioner. Awesome. This will help you. But if it's just for you and your family, then you're even more in the right place. So
yeah, and we find like one of the main impetuses of the Light Cellar. So I'm Angela, for those of you who haven't met me yet. And I also come from the nutrition world, and I'm studying herbalism as well, because it's all connected. It's all herbs are just an extension of beautiful nutrition. And one of the things that I found with any clients that I work with or any classes that I teach for my own practice is I have to get to the root of the problem. So if there's some sort of health issue coming up, I need to get to the root of it. And while Western medicine is wonderful for solving symptoms, it doesn't get to the root of the problem. And so we use herbs to kind of build that foundation. And that's why they tend to be a little bit more effective in the long term. So everybody here uses herbs? Everybody? Or if, you know, in some way or another, whether it's culinary, even culinary, herbalism is my sort of specialty because I work with nutrition. So when we work with, the thing that I have found, especially with healing up our bodies when we're out of balance, is that you can get a lot of advice from a lot of people. You can read a lot of books, but what it ultimately comes down to is how you are in relationship with your body. So how do you understand the messages that your body's sending you in the form of, say, symptoms, for example? And so one of the things that I do with people is I try to work with how to listen to that kind of voice in your body, how to connect with it, how to develop a relationship with it. And then as we develop a relationship with herbs, we can kind of say, oh, that herb, and then it can get very intuitive, where you can be like, oh, I'm craving that herb. Okay, that is the thing that I'm thinking of right now. Or you're out, David Winston tells this story in that one of the classes that I took with him. He was trying to figure out this really complex case with a client, and she had a lot of kidney issues, and all of the things that he was using were kind of working, but then they were starting to like fade out. She was using Western medicine as well, and he didn't know what to do. So he went out, went out into his garden, and he has like a giant nettle patch, and he remembered a teaching from one of his mentors that was, the plants will often tell you, this sounds very esoteric and maybe a little bit out there, but the plants will often tell you that they can help. And so there was no breeze, and he saw this like nettle, it was time of the seed, kind of moving in the distance, and he sort of like, it's like, oh, he thought maybe there's an animal over there, or he'd flush something out. But he goes over and he's like, there's nothing there. There's no breeze. The nettle was like literally telling him, because he was walking around thinking so deeply about this client. The nettle was like, the seed especially, this is the remedy. Yeah. And so he made this tincture for her, and he did a whole sort of protocol that he developed. I mean, he's a 40+ year herbalist, so he has a lot of experience. And here's one of his books there. Yeah. And I bet you he talks about nettles in that book, but all different types of the plant that we can use. But that's the kind of expertise that you don't necessarily need to be a professional herbalist, master herbalist to get that. When you walk outside and you go acquaint yourself with plants, you can go on plant walks with Malcolm and Denis, you can do all kinds of things to sort of deepen that relationship. And I think for me, that's been a really helpful way to address ailments that I'm like, I don't know what to do for this. Mm-hmm. These can be just like kind of guideposts that can take you on your journey.
So. Totally. And that communication between your body and the plants and the interpretation of the energetics can be as simple as like, okay, heat in the body from whatever it is. Maybe it's a sunburn, or maybe it's menopause, you know, it doesn't matter what the cause is. Okay, there's heat, maybe there's dryness. And then you start looking for herbs that are cooling, that are moistening, and working with it that way.
And different qualities of herbs. Like, we're going to make you a tea, which I'm going to address right now, because I think, oh, you brought it down.
Brought it down on it. Yeah.
So we're going to put ginger in, and we were like, fresh ginger or dry ginger, and sometimes you work with what you got, but there's different qualities to even that plant. So when you're thinking about fresh ginger, it's going to be more moist. It's still going to have those qualities of anti-inflammatory. It's wonderful at breaking down mucus. So if you ever had a lot of dairy and you get that kind of like, but even if you have that cold where the mucus is just kind of sitting in your throat, ginger is wonderful for this, because it kind of breaks it down, smooths it out. We know it's great for nausea, it's great for digestion. So, but the qualities of the ginger, even the ginger in that state, whether it's dry or fresh, are going to affect the qualities of how it works in you and when you might use fresh versus dry. So we're going to use dry today, but we could have just as easily used fresh.
And so how do you learn all this stuff, right? Well, I mean, there's a lot of intricacies that you just mentioned, just even the difference between dry ginger, fresh ginger. I guess first and foremost, we should say this is a lifetime path, actually, you know, and hopefully you're not dealing with anything life or death, right? You're dealing with, oh, I got a bit of a headache, I got a bit of a cold. You know, it's those things you got to start with to turn towards herbs to build your understanding, build your repertoire. And if you get it wrong, like,
there are no mistakes.
It's a practice. There are no mistakes.
They say there are no mistakes in herbalism. There's only, you know, you found now another way not to do it. So, okay, that didn't work.
Yeah.
I'll try something else. It's like being a scientist, right? You're always experimenting.
Totally. So I think number one, take the herbs. There's a saying in herbalism, compliance is key. The herbs don't work unless you take them.
It's true.
It's amazing.
I learned that the hard way. Take them.
Yeah. So not only to begin to experience their benefits, but it starts you on that journey of being a practitioner of herbs and just playing with it, understanding your own body. That's that empowerment piece, right? Instead of handing it over to, okay, what does the pharmacist say or my doctor say? And as you begin learning, you don't need to know it all, right? Have a reference book. I like to reference my friend, Robert Rogers. I mean, this man, he's almost written as many books as he is old.
It's true.
And he's up there in his 70s. He might even be close to 80. Some of them are very thick, very well referenced. These are maybe some of his smaller ones. Yeah, absolute encyclopedic knowledge where we do plant walks and we'll host Robert sometimes. And I like to play the game, Let's Stump Robert. Right? So Robert, what's this plant? Right? Like, what's that bush over there? He'll tell you the common name, the Latin name. He'll tell you the chemical constituents. He's like, oh yeah, one time in my clinical practice, I had a client that was presenting symptoms like this, and we gave her this herb at this dose, and and started, you know, like, unbelievable. Like his memory and his kind of knowledge is incredible. But yet, I compare myself like, oh gosh, I don't know anything, right? Maybe you know even less. But when it comes to taking the herbs, me, you, and him, we're all on equal playing ground. Okay, well, maybe there's like placebo, you know, it helps, right? That's a real thing. So the more you know, maybe the more helpful it's going to be. But when it comes to just taking the herbs, so that's the most important. Herbs don't work unless you take them, and then that's going to build your path. Where to start? What herbs to take? Well, another herbalist I'll reference, Stephen Herod Buhner, he's got this wonderful phrase that I've kind of adapted. He says, you know, follow the golden threads. I keep hearing about holy basil. What's that thing about reishi, ginger, right? Like these things are coming up into your awareness, into your consciousness. Oh, that article all about Eleuthero, or what's this concept of adaptogens? You know, just begin to follow that. Start there. Maybe you're interested in your heritage, right? Like your ancestors. There could be a particular, herbal modality, right? You're like, or you're just super into yoga. Like, I'm going to get the Ayurvedic herbs. Awesome. We have the most incredible opportunity that we have, not only access to the herbs, any herb you could possibly imagine. I bet you could access it. I mean, there's some that like really take some digging, really take some searching, but it wasn't too long ago. Let's take, for example, in China, it's like you could not harvest reishi, right? Like that was reserved for the emperor, or even in old, you know, England, that type of thing. Oh, it's the kings. You're not allowed in the forest to forage, right? In that sense. So we have access through modern, you know, means of our supply chains. Literally, not only the variety, the diversity of herbs, but the quality of herbs. The quality of herbs we have access to are unparalleled. Spices, you mentioned culinary herbalism. Unbelievable what we have access to. So not only that, but the knowledge, the wisdom that's been built up through these cultures for generations in a book, in a search, in, you know, referencing, speaking to somebody that is a little bit further down that path. So we got access to the herbs and the knowledge that we can begin to utilize. And well, some might argue, well, herbs, that's just fluff, right? No science to it. Yeah, no, nothing. My father, I'll directly quote him. He says, I do not believe in herbs. What? Okay, all right. Yes, my father says, yes, yeah, he does not believe in herbs. Okay, I didn't know if it was quite a matter of belief or not, but there we are. Like this book, for instance, all natural remedies, very predominantly herbal based. There's some nutraceuticals, there's some food recommendations, rejuvenate your brain naturally. There's over 1,000 scientific references just in this one book. So it's a total myth. Total myth that it's not backed by science.
We could get into the politics of the fact that it doesn't make a lot of money.
Right.
So those who have a lot of money don't necessarily invest in the research.
Yeah.
But we have also thousands of years of traditional use.
Traditional use,
yeah.
Anecdotal, experiential evidence, right? I mean, arguably, I'd say the Chinese herbal system is perhaps, I don't want to say the longest, but the most detailed, the most complex of any of the traditional herbal systems, thousands of years.
And Ayurveda.
And Ayurveda. Oh yeah, that's true.
They're neck and neck.
Yeah. Whereas you compare that to the Amazonian, South American, right? They didn't codify it. They didn't write it down. It was more of an oral tradition. Doesn't make it any less valuable, I would say, and its efficacy. So, pick a herbal tradition if that you want to get into more generally. Pick specific herbs, one at a time that you just slowly build your knowledge. And if you remember a couple things, okay, dandelion liver, right? And you open up the books, go a little bit deeper, read a little bit more. And then the other thing I recommend is begin to interact with our local environment, right? And what did the indigenous people, as well as Europeans and other immigrants have come to this land and brought the plants with them, what do they know about it? And the things that are literally growing in our backyard. And, once upon a time, there were no grocery stores. There were no pharmacies. So what did they do, right? They utilized what was in their environment. And that's, I would say, super fun, super empowering, and it'll recreate your relationship to the natural world. This climate crisis, right? That's like, we're facing all this. Like, we could solve that just by people getting outside and connecting with the natural landscape. Forget carbon taxes, forget all this stuff, because you now care. You now are invested. You now have a relationship versus not.
Yeah, and I think starting with it's a community thing, obviously. Like we talk about spreading contagion. You're probably hearing the latest contagion conversation coming back into the mainstream again. And I think we forget that we also spread health. So when we ourselves can, we breathe our microbiome, we engage with the people that we're in a room with. This is important for our bodies. It's a natural, social, totally normal experience. And so finding ways to boost your health does impact our community, and it does help others as well. So I think listening to your body and what is your body telling you, what symptoms are coming up, where is it located? Can you sit with yourself for a minute and be like, I keep getting, for me, I'll tell you a personal story. I keep getting eczema coming up every winter. So now I dig deep. What does that mean? It's my skin. Our skin and our lungs are formed in the womb at the same time. What's going on with my lungs? I have beat my lungs up over the years, let me tell you that. Not to mention the fact that I live in a city and all of those other things. So what can I do to support my lungs? The lungs are deeper into the immune system. In Chinese medicine, the lungs are connected to the large intestine. So addressing all of those kind of things and just being like, okay, well, let's see what I can do to support those. So that's another thing to consider about when you're kind of building your herbal repertoire and how you can help yourself thrive.
Cool. So I would say another kind of path parallel to, again, using the herbs, learning about them, engaging with the natural world, and pulling the herbs from the ecosystem, of which a friend of mine defines modern herbalism like in kind of a context of like going to school and learning it, that kind of intellectual form. He says it's nothing more than the institutionalization of wild food intuition. Yeah.
That's good.
Which I think it's good to learn both ways, right? Yeah. That intuitive, like, oh, the nettle's moving, as well as kind of the books and the studies and that type of thing.
What is nettle actually? Is this, I mean, obviously David Winston knew what nettle did, but he never thought of the seed. He was using the root
Right.
and the leaf, and he didn't know that the seed was going to be so critical for that particular client. So that's another thing. When we get to know the plant, we get to know the different parts, we get to know the different sort of uses of it. You know, when we're moving into the fall, we move into the plant energy kind of goes back into the root of the plant. So this is a good time to harvest and to consume the root of the plant, which is, we've got a couple roots going on here today. So, well, one.
Yeah.
One root.
So there's that real, like, again, what could be passed off as airy fairy, like, you know, fluff. My father, I don't believe in that, right? And then there is that real, like, true hardcore, like, science to it, and both are good, you know, in that sense. And another story, Stephen Herod Buhner, I did a workshop with him, and he was talking about this plant spirit communication. And if you do a workshop with him, well, you can't anymore. He's passed since, but you know, I did a 5-day intensive with him, and you know, he was kind of prepping us all ready to go, like, find a plant and sit with it and just see what we got. And he recounted a story from a previous workshop where, again, similar type of group, maybe 30 of them, that type of thing. They all went out for the afternoon, you know, found a plant, whatever, like, called to them. They just sat with it and then would kind of report back at the end. And one woman at the end of the session had just really high expectations, and she was a little frustrated, right? Because you hear some people, they talk about green fairies that popped out of the tree, and like, you know?
They were on
Sometimes it happens, right? Like, there's a spirit, there's something, you know,
There
a deeper
is,
communication.
yeah.
And so she wanted that. She's like, but I didn't get it. You know, she's like, in fact, you know, I kept falling asleep. And Stephen's like, well, what plant were you sitting with? Oh, that one, valerian? You know, like, you got a message, right?
It is true. I mean, I think we all know there's more to the world than what we can see, taste,
Yeah.
smell, touch, you know, we
Really,
all know that.
You know, the language of the body and communicating with our
Yeah.
body, like you said, like, you know, it may not come as like, hey, Angela, you know,
Yeah.
check out your lungs in
Yeah.
relation to your skin, like, you know, signs and symptoms. That's a communication
Mhm.
of the body, right? How do you know when you're thirsty? How do you know when you're hungry? Well, the body speaks to you. It tells you, right? You get those little, like, but it's non-verbal, right? In that sense. And I believe that's how plants communicate as well. They communicate through chemistry. And one of the reasons why plant medicine is so effective is because plants, unlike animals, have no other defense mechanisms. Chemistry is what they've got, right? For animals, we have locomotion. Like, we can run, we can fight back, we can do all these different adaptive things that every species has. But plants, right? I think it was in the one of those BBC documentaries, they talk about the giraffes grazing on the acacia trees. And they get a chemical clue because the tree, like, produces chemicals in that moment. Hey, you've been grazing here on this tree too long. It changes its chemistry.
Mhm.
The giraffe gets a clue, like, the taste changes, right? And they move on. So plants develop all this chemistry far more complex than we do because they've been around so much longer. And this is their primary defense mechanism against, you know, viruses, bacteria, fungi, other animals. I mean, you name it, they're chemical factories. And it's that chemistry that we have discovered, you know, again, through simple observation, that, like, okay, maybe this will help cool my body, right? Or whatever the case is. So
Yeah, cravings I find are a good indication of that too. Like, I've often been like, I'm craving mint, like I need mint, or I need ginger is a perfect example. That's something I use quite regularly. It's a great let's say you've been with someone, they give you the call, I'm sick. You're like, oh, we just spent the whole night together or whatever. There's so many herbs you can use at that point.
you get that call
But
often?
I hang out with a lot of
Just spend
sick
the night
people.
together with
Yeah,
somebody.
yeah, some sick person. Yeah. Oh, you know my life. Not a. But anyway, moving right along. That is something that I'm like, okay, ginger. Ginger's great because it heats up your body. It's diaphoretic, so it kind of can make you sweat a little bit. It increases your circulation. So now it's going to stimulate the immune system to spread all its beautiful magic everywhere. When you drink warm things, take care of your nose and your sinuses, you can kill stuff. Like, a lot of pathogens live there for a while before they make their way in while your immune system fights it. So you can kind of get rid of stuff just by using that simple method of like a hot herbal drink after a party, for example. Or, you know, you've been around a lot of people, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I think that using those kind of clues, those kind of like, what do I feel like eating right now? I mean, sometimes it's potato chips, but maybe there's something to that too. Maybe your body needs fat. Maybe it needs some salt. Maybe, you know, like, so just thinking about how your body's speaking. Your body is always in the present moment. It's not like your brain off in the future or in the past. It's always present. So when we can get that kind of communication going, it can help us direct us to what we might need in that moment.
Okay. Well, while you prepare the tea,
I'm going to prepare some tea.
Yeah.
I'm going to pour it from this pot into this thing, which is not something I want any of you to watch because it's not going to be graceful
all right.
at all. That's probably a good idea. Yeah. Thank you, Donna. So, should we talk about the tea?
Well, yeah, in a sec.
Okay,
So,
go ahead.
kind of simultaneous to your journey, everything we've been talking about. Another aspect, which is very important, but probably the easiest of any of this, is learning how to prepare the herbs. And there's only, I don't know, like if we really, really, really stretched it, maybe 20, but primarily a dozen, let's say, different herbal preparation techniques, you know, to preserve, extract, and deliver herbal medicine. There's only so many ways to preserve herbs, you know, and again, this gets out into you going out into the natural environment, you know, harvesting plants, bringing them home, you know, having them for the winter. How do you preserve them so that you'll have access to that, you know, year round when you need it? How do you extract the medicinal compounds, right? What's in ginger or what's in turmeric or what's in reishi? There's an art and a science about how you extract those chemical constituents. Most of us are so familiar with tea, which is amazing, which is one of the best ways to extract and deliver. Well, there are tinctures and there are salves and there are, you know, and there's only so many different mediums that we can put into these herbs into that will, again, preserve, extract, and deliver. So that you could learn in an afternoon, right? And then with that foundation, as you're going through your herbal journey through the rest of your life, you know, going on plant walks, reading books, getting herbs, experimenting, like, oh, okay, this I'm going to use as an oil because I'm dealing with skin issues and I want to like address this topically. Or I'm going to make a tea, or I'm going on a trip. I need something like just quick, easy, accessible that I can have in my pocket. All right, I'm going to make a tincture. And you know the technique. And once you know that, then you can then apply that to any herb. So that's a part of your journey, is being your own medicine maker.
We have a class for that.
And we have a class for that.
Literally, you can't learn it all in one afternoon.
That's right. Yeah. It's I call it the complete herbal medicine maker. And maybe it's not quite truthful when I say complete, because you'll learn the 12 different methods. You know, there's some other ones, but they require a little bit more, you know, specialty equipment or ingredients. But complete in the sense that for the average person, the home herbalist, once you got that, you got that. Yeah, salves. Absolutely. So next one we're doing is end of the month. I think it's September 30th. That might be. I don't know, at some point. No, that's you. Okay, it's in October.
It's on the door.
It's on the door. That's right. Okay, we have a question. Oh, wonderful. Okay, so the difference between an herb and a spice, I would say kind of conventional wisdom, well, parsley is an herb and, you know, cayenne is a spice in that regard. I would say, if we take the biggest, broadest definition of an herb, it's something that will, you know, influence or shift your body in a positive way, in which case a spice could be an herb, you know, but a spice, you know, even more further defined, you know, is more in that culinary sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say herbs almost like the herb. Sorry, I always get. I study with some Americans that say herb, and then I have my Canadian friends who say herb. But I always think of herbs as like who asked the question? So I know who I'm addressing. Okay, thank you. herbs would be like the umbrella, spice is kind of like underneath. So I tend to use them interchangeably when I'm talking about culinary foods. But when I'm talking about more specifically medicinal herbs, I would say herbs. I would call it a spice, but it can also be a herb because you can make, herbal tincture out of it. You can do certain topicals with it. There's lots you can do with it. Beautiful throat spray.
Spices more so in the culinary aspect.
Yeah, that's what I often think. Yeah. And it's I think a personal thing too. Like Malcolm was saying, we think of things that are more spicy as spices and things that we have in our spice cabinet as spices. Those were probably probably most of us first introduction to herbs were in our parents' spice cabinet, right? Our grandparents' spice cabinet. So, yeah.
You want to try that? Make sure it's good. I know it's quite hot.
He's always trying to make me burn myself here, this guy. Okay, so can I say what I put in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So well, that looks like my writing, but I don't think it is. Anyway, so we did reishi, cardamom, ginger, super simple. And the reason we chose these particular herbs and spices is because of the season. So I wanted to think about things, it could be cool today. It's not. It happens to be really, really hot in Calgary today, which is awesome. But when we're thinking about the cooler seasons, having more warming spices is very natural. It's very traditional in our culture. We all know about the Christmas spices and so on. So reishi, I think probably most of us know. Have everyone tried reishi, to use reishi? Yeah. So one of the most common mushroom allies that we can use. There's a giant one out there by the Elixir Bar, which you can go and worship.
And it's said to be actually the most well-studied herb on the planet, is reishi mushroom. There are more studies about reishi than anything else, more than turmeric, which is huge.
Yeah.
Peppermint, you name it.
Yeah. So traditionally used in China, but in it's Ganoderma is the species. That's the family species, Ganoderma. I'm so bad with phytochemistry, but I know it's Ganoderma. And yet
you're still a herbalist.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. It's embarrassing.
Not Robert.
I'm not.
Right. Yeah,
I
yeah,
am
not
Robert Rogers.
That's
I am
okay.
not. And
so grab the top of the glass.
Not yet. Yeah, give me another 40 years. 30, 40, something like that. Anyways, Ganoderma is in every continent on the planet except Antarctica. So we have our own species here in Canada and then the West Coast, North America. This is probably, do you know which one this is? This is the lucidum, probably?
That's right, yeah.
So the Chinese variety. And reishi is wonderful. I always think of energetics of herbs, and reishi is really great at taking you out of your head and putting you into your heart. It's a very grounding herb. It's really nice. So if you're a person who thinks a lot and you need to do a little bit more, reishi would be a lovely thing to bring into your life. We use the slices of reishi. You can use powdered reishi. We have tinctures. We got, what else? That's the main ones, hey?
That's the main ones, yeah.
And then any other questions about reishi? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, in general, so you gave all the different powder tincture. So I would recommend that the more live the better, but is that not
well, reishi is one. Yeah. Well, what happens with tinctures? Thank you for bringing that up. So as Malcolm was saying, there's lots of different ways to pull the chemistry to get the medicine out of the plant, or in this case, the fungi. And so with reishi, this is just water extraction. So we're just having a tea with it. We're just getting the water soluble constituents out of it. We're not getting, we're not getting the terpenes. We're not getting all those resinous properties, which we would get with alcohol. So when you have a tincture, you're getting almost a dual extraction, usually, if they've made it properly, and you're getting all the chemistry out of it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, totally.
And so,
is that better?
I think when you get more medicine out of something, that's better.
More full
However,
spectrum.
yeah.
So for instance, the long chain sugars, the polysaccharides, which are really responsible for the immunomodulating component of reishi.
Yeah.
Water soluble, no problem.
So still beneficial for that aspect of it.
Yeah. But if somebody was maybe dealing with cancer, then some of those like terpenes are going to be more helpful, and you would need the dual extract version to a much broader benefit.
Is this in your course or in a course or something about the different?
Oh, you're learning it now.
I would if you wanted to dig deeper, I would study, you know, some of these books like The Sky Mushroom Medicine, Robert Rogers. Terry Willard has a ton of stuff about reishi and mushrooms.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
Wild Rose College.
loads. Yeah, Wild Rose College. I use the Herb Mentor website as well. They have loads of classes with Rosalie de la Forêt and all those wonderful people. So there's lots you can study about mushrooms. There's so much. But you haven't done a mushroom class in a long
It's
time.
been a while.
Maybe it's time. Maybe this
Yeah.
is a sign.
Right, there we go.
So maybe there'll be a mushroom class coming up at the Light Cellar
Yeah.
in the new year.
Cool. Another question? Oh, okay, totally. Glycerin based. So that's another, we'll call it a solvent, right? Water, alcohol, vinegar, glycerin. I know less about that. Yeah, for some reason, I'm just personally not drawn to
I don't
glycerites.
think he's a boozer, this guy. He loves it's like glycerites
really.
they tend to be better for certain plants. I wouldn't say you would get as much. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say it would be as powerful at drawing out those terpenes as alcohol would. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it would still be helpful. It's not gonna hurt, especially for people who are avoiding alcohol. A lot of people like glycerin. It's better with kids, but this is a great way to get it in kids is something like this. Powdered, making chocolates, using it in baking, things like that. But it's really good. The energetics of the reishi will definitely come out in a tea like this. You'll still get that kind of heart medicine. It's really great for sleeping. It helps regulate stress and adaptogenic properties. So that's the main kind of ingredient in this tea. And then of course you can taste the ginger. Ginger is so powerful that no matter what you put it in, I tried not to put too much because I really wanted the cardamom to come out because I love cardamom. brings things together so beautifully, especially if you have a really simple tea blend that's like. For freshening the breath. I was just reading in one of my books about how it has a particular volatile oil in it that's really great for freshening the breath, which might be why it's at restaurants and stuff. It's sort of like fennel that you can chew it. Like ginger, it's a wonderful digestive aid. It's really great for the stomach. It's an antimicrobial, antiseptic. It can be used for mouth sores as well. You can make a mouth rinse out of it. It's a beautiful herb. Topical, especially with rose oil. I really love cardamom.
Nice.
Maybe
Cool.
something we should make. Anyway.
Right. Well, yeah.
Yes.
Every time I go to the bathroom for storage bedroom, we come back my mind. That's contaminated water.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes they're right beside, the farms are right beside each other. Yeah.
Okay. So for sure. Great question. So for those online, those on the opposite side of the room, wild foraging, right? Like in the back of her mind, she's saying like, okay, there could have been something sprayed here, herbicides, pesticides, even just pollution, that type of thing. It's a real thing. It's something you need to be very mindful of, cautious of, and it's a part of that journey of being a wild forager. So I have a rule, I will never forage anywhere near railroad tracks, like, because it's just contaminated.
They clear
on
them.
either side of it. So you just have to know the area and pick as best you can. And I think there's it's
sometimes you just have to bless food and hope for the best because we cannot avoid everything. And another great reason to keep your own system as well functioning as possible, especially those detoxification systems, because then we could get rid of a lot of things, sweating, drinking certain teas, certain foods can really help. There are things you can do to balance it out. No, we can't avoid it. We can't.
Right.
Even just walking along the street, we're going to be inhaling a bunch of carbon. Yeah. And we do the best we can and get to know places who, people who own property. We have someone we met at the herb gathering last year or earlier this year. And she brought, I'm trying to remember she takes care of this land underneath power lines in BC. So she offered to take care of that land because normally they would just go in and like spray everything and she was like, no, I will hand harvest. So she hand harvested like a bunch of berries from this area. And I was like, she's like, it was my way of kind of making sure she can harvest and she knows nothing's being sprayed there. She knows that she can sell it to people. And so, yeah.
And I think the other side is, and you already kind of acknowledged it, is that, because it comes from a store, we often don't think about it. Or if it's got a certification, it's also just, can be susceptible as well.
Depends. Yeah, it depends on the certification. Yeah, there's certain certifications that allow. Yeah, it's impossible to know.
Yeah.
It's also the weather pattern. You might have a certain number of acres that's grown organically, but if the neighbors door brings in the house from that direction.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, there is a closed system, so you're not going to completely 100% avoid any potential toxins and stuff. But as they were saying, you need to look for areas where it's less. Keep your body's functioning like that. And you support people that choose to use natural ways of growing and caring for the plants.
Yeah, and maybe, to kind of put a nice little bow on everything we've been talking about, okay, what about pollution? What about radiation? What about this? All these things. Well, there's an herb for that.
There's an herb for that.
Yeah.
Worry.
Yeah, you're stressed. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
That amount, I would say, just like the rest. trust what you're doing and that do things from a point of alignment and then surrender to fear and this crap ain't gonna help anything.
Yeah, no, for sure. Cool. Well, I want to wrap up and give Angela a plug. She's going to be doing a class Saturday, September 30th. She's kind of got this little series where she's going through the seasons. I'll let you talk about it.
Yeah, we're looking at, so tea, I find tea to be like a really beautiful, simple, as we see, way to kind of bring herbs in. And there's so many things you can do with it. So we will look at, we did a summer series where I think I picked way too many plants. So this will be a little less plants. And we'll taste them all and you will make your own blend. So we'll talk about what conditions, if there's anything you want to focus on, maybe you have a particular condition that you want to support over the fall months. We'll talk about that and I can help you create your own blend and then you'll take your own tea home. So it's a 2-hour class. We'll go a little bit more of a deep dive. You can, yeah, so it's fun.
Yeah,
It's fun.
One of those I already have a
We're going to do one I'm going to make Malcolm do them every season.
Yeah, every quarter, every season.
Quarter.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll do
So-
a winter one. Yeah.
The autumn edition.
Yeah,
So
for
it's an
sure.
opportunity to learn more about specific herbs, whatever you
Yeah.
choose for that day that you feel is
Yeah.
appropriate for the season. And then this art of blending, which I get asked all the time.
Yeah.
Like, how do I learn how to what should I put together and how should I do this? And
Yeah.
there's an art to it, like again, thinking about ginger and the role it would play in a formula.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that'll be covered and help you on your journey. But I want to make sure that we have a quick little break, turn things around. We got our next presenter coming up at 1 o'clock. It's a variety show today. There's
Yeah.
each topic is very different.